Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, and I've got a very special guest, Brisbane Lions supporter, all-round great bloke, Supercoach DR. How are you, mate?
Very good, thank you, mate. Thank you very much for having me on. And you do say all-round great bloke, but when we're having a couple of quiet ones together the other night, managed to spill the pint over your phone, mate. And I tell you what, you're the good bloke because you're very polite about it. Just got the cloth, wiped her down, and no dramas, mate. So great to catch up with you the other night, mate. And thank you very much for having me on. We're getting close to the start of Supercoach, aren't we?
We sure are, mate. Yeah, no, may have had a couple other choice words at home when my phone wouldn't work until the next morning of that, but
Oh,
it's all good, mate. I was just like, it all worked out in the end. So I was probably more disappointed in those beer costs for spilling a pint these days in the cities. Nearly need to take a mortgage out for that, unlike the good old
absolutely,
days.
mate.
But no, mate, it was great catching up with all the Supercoach community. Obviously, I think you guys, cracked 4 or 5 thousand followers now. You guys are flying yourself, mate. All the work you've been doing with the Supercoach community for such a long time. I feel a bit embarrassed being here now, being an expert, and you should be there with me, mate.
Oh, not whatsoever, mate. No, I'll leave that to you, mate. You are the absolute goat when it comes to these things, mate. Not just your BBL, but your AFL stuff as well. So, no, mate, could not go to a better bloke.
Oh,
And I certainly tune into every video that you put out, mate. So, not only do you give some great info, but you actually share a lot with the community and would not meet a nicer bloke, mate. So, nah, all the success in the world you do deserve, mate. And very happy for you, brother.
I appreciate it, mate. Okay, we'll stop blowing smoke off each other's ass right now. But no, I do appreciate you coming on. Before we get into it, though, how can everybody else find you? Who I'm sure everybody out there is already following you, but if they aren't, how do they find you, mate?
Much appreciated, mate. So yeah, it's just at supercoach_dr on Twitter. Really with Instagram, mate. I don't do a heap there. It's more advertised. I do have a members group, which is cool, but it's supercoach_with_dr. And apart from that, just a YouTube channel. Just search for Supercoach with DR, and you'll be able to find me there, mate. But yeah, really excited to hit the 5K. It's just a number, but very humbling, mate. And yeah, hope to chat with as many people as possible during the year.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just love chatting to the community. All right, so we are here to talk about your boys, who I thought when I organised this originally, well, the Lions will get this done. So, and then I was feeling really bad about this, but yeah. So on was it Friday night now? Is the Lions 12-13-85 going down to the Blues 13-8-86. What did you think of the match, just in general, mate?
Oh, well, what a match of two halves. What a match of ebbs and flows. It sort of turned on its head, didn't it, from the prelim final last year? And it's funny, after quarter time, obviously a very, very happy man, but I did quickly jump on to a live stream with Damo, with a couple of the other boys there. And I did say, look, I'm not counting all my chickens at once here because we know what happened in the prelim final. Carlton had the red hot start, and then Brisbane certainly came over the top of them. So although we've had the best start really that you can to 2024. We're not over the line yet. And lo and behold, didn't Carlton come back? Now, what I think really hurt us, mate, was our accuracy. We had a couple of set shots. I think it was Cameron had a couple of really easy ones, Hipwood. And I think if we had nailed those before the Carlton goal, I forget who it was, the small forward there, I think we would have had enough momentum and enough space on the scoreboard to just continue that. But Carlton got on a run, mate. Set shots were good. Accuracy was better than ours. And yeah, just clutch moments. They were the better side. So really unfortunate. And I think the most unfortunate thing for both sides were the injuries coming out of the game. Shattering for both Doc and Kitty Coleman. Two different stories as well. We all know what poor old Doc's story's like with the cancer, the ACLs, coming towards the end of his career. And then with Kitty Coleman, a young fella, seems like this is his time to break out, no longer in the shadow of Daniel Rich, a really important player for the side, but best of all, a wonderful human. And anyone that knows Sam Doherty knows that he's such a wonderful human as well. So two big blows to start off round zero, and a 1 point loss just hurts even more, mate. But that's football. And congratulations to the Blues and big Harry McKay at the end. Absolute, yeah, steel in his veins, mate.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
can't
Yeah,
complain. Well done, Blues.
I think you meant, yeah, it was Cunningham that kicked that goal after I think Charlie
Cunningham,
Cameron
that's right, mate.
missed a couple there, and you're completely right. Like, at least for Kitty Coleman, the only light is he's still a young fellow. He's going to have a brilliant career. You know, wish him all the best. But for Doherty, yeah, that was just shattering. Like, I was there that first game back when he kicked that big goal against the Tigers, and they all get around him, and yeah, it's a great story. And I think also him being a former Lion, both teams, I'm sure both supporters,
Yeah,
that you always, those moments where a player leaves you and it's that rival thing. But yeah, I'm sure every Lion supporter there was just heartbreaking as well, seeing such a great player in person going down like that. So yeah, unfortunately, this is the shit part of footy. There's no doubt
mate.
about it. But I guess the shining light, it gives somebody else an opportunity now to make a name for themselves.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I know for Brisbane we've got your Jimmy Maddens, Con McKenna's still a little while away, I think, but there's certainly blokes that can step up into the role, and that's all part of football, as you said, mate. Injuries are part of football, but the two incidents within itself, Doherty's I thought looked pretty minor at the start. No way in any shape or form think that was an ACL, and Kitty's looked a little bit worse there, but so close to the siren as well. Just the sad part of football, mate, but it is what it is, and unfortunately, both teams need to move on and look for the next soldier to fill that position.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll start with unfortunately, the losing side, the Brisbane Lions. I'm sure they will be bouncing back very soon, but from a Supercoach perspective there, mate, what did you like the most?
Yeah, well, look, I suppose we'll get straight to the first talking point, mate, which is Jared Lyons. Now, I'm obviously a mad Brisbane man, but I don't know whether or not I'm actually the right person to ask about this because there was no way that I actually saw Jared Lyons in our 22. 23, yes, but not the 22. I just didn't really think there was a solid spot there for him with Dunkley and Lockie Neal. But if you look to the CBAs, super interesting. So we always had Neal with 83%, then we had Dunkley with 59, and then it was Lyons with 52, McCluggage 45, and then Rayner coming at 38. Now, what is interesting, I'm sort of swapping between players here, mate, but Josh Dunkley, 59%, obviously spent a lot more time forward. If you look back to last year, his lowest CBA rate that I can quickly see here is 55%. Apart from that, it's all in the greens. There's a 63, but it's all sort of mid 70s and above. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought that we'd actually start Kyle Lohman in our 22. And JL would be the sub. We know that he did lose his spot last year and then came back, but mainly as that sub in the final as well. So I thought that would be his most likely role. But the fact that he really mirrored Dunkley in his output, if you look at the stats, mate, Lions and Dunkley, very, very similar. So Supercoach points, Dunkley 101, Lions 106, kicks 11 to 10, handballs 10 to 9, 5 marks each, 9 tackles each, contested, Dunkley had the 9, Lions the 7, the 3 clangers. The big difference here was the use of the football. So Lions went at 78%, Dunkley 66, 82% time on ground for Dunkley, 70% for Jared Lyons. So 12% more there. But really, if you look at the numbers and you look at the output there, mate, then Dunkley was basically Jared Lyons. So that's a little bit of a concern possibly for Dunkley moving forward. I don't think too many of us are actually looking to start Dunkley in our side. Certainly more of an upgrade target, but could that mean that we get him a little bit of a cheaper price? Who knows? But the worry that I have with Jared Lyons is that, and this is all respect to the man, mate, because he was such a terrific selection for us coming across from the Gold Coast for free, if you don't mind. But I think that he's lost a bit of a yard of pace, and he's not the sort of player that can afford that, particularly at his age. But if that's the way that they want to go with things and maybe rotate him with your Dunkleys, your Cam Rayners, maybe that second CBA spot is more up for grabs than what I thought. I thought it would just be Dunkley, Neal, and then McCluggage, and then a bit of Rayner, maybe Lyons if he comes on as a sub, a bit of Zach Bailey type stuff. But it seems like they're going with Jared Lyons to start the season. In saying all this, mate, I just think, and this is hard because he's at a really awkward price, but I'd much rather still leave it just for another week see how he goes. They've got the bye, and if you really like him that much, then maybe look to get him in your side. But what are your thoughts on Jared Lyons very quickly, mate? He certainly he's got to pique your interest, and he's certainly got to be on our watch list after that performance. But what's your take on him as a non-Lions man looking from the outside in, mate?
Yeah, well, this is why I just put out my latest team and looking at starting one or two giants. I've been big on two flips throughout this buy period. Now, where those flips come in, I think it's one GWS player to a Brisbane or a Carlton player, and then one later on with either a Sydney Collingwood or a Richmond Melbourne. So I'm definitely looking at, and originally I was thinking maybe it's one of the premium giants to a Neil or a Dunkley because they're going to be, no one's going to own them. No one's starting them, and it'd be such a point of difference, and especially after the bye. I think they've got the North Melbourne in the gather round, so I wouldn't mind having the VC on one of them coming into that matchup. Yeah. The problem was, you look at the heat maps in the game. So Lachie Neale definitely locked into that midfield. I nearly thought that was going to be Dunkley, and maybe it was sort of Neale playing that secondary role, just that little bit of age difference now. Like Lachie Neale's a gun, but he's 30. Josh Dunkley's 27. So that's the kind of direction I thought they'd go. But a 31 Jared Lyons, a year-old Jared Lyons, he's the 7 centimetre shorter version of Dunks. You've got Dunks to come in to play a particular role, and all of a sudden, Dunkley's heat map is there's a lot of McKay on there. I'm trying to think the best comparison, and old Bevo putting McKay that wing half forward, and there's this real big red mark at the half forward line there for Dunks, which was a bit surprising. Maybe there was something we didn't know in the first game. He still got in the midfield, played that defensive role that he does with the 9 tackles. Was still up around the ball, but just not as much as expected. Hugh McCluggage, he's the other one that we expect to probably play more midfield. It had a lot of heat map on that wing, as he normally does, so it divided his time between the wing and in the guts. And maybe it's because there's no Dev Robbo, because Will Ashcroft, probably might be back mid-year. Maybe it's just Fagan going, we don't want to change things up completely. So we know Ashcroft's going to be the third main midfielder in there. So who can play that role up until Ashcroft's back ready and fit, and maybe it might have just been Dev Robbo if he was available. But so who's the one with the experience that can go in there, and Jared Lyons obviously has a lot of experience. So that's where I don't mind the idea of, because a couple of people are now like, should we be looking at him instead of like your Bonner or Fife or Harms, because he's all in that same price range. But the idea that I look at that Giant or that Suns player, and if for whatever reason Jared Lyons plays the exact same role and goes another 100 next week, then potentially it's him that gets swapped in, because it might be too hard to kind of leave him out after his bye if he's going to go back-to-back hundreds at that price of 280, 285, something like that. So it's hard to kind of get a read, because I was like you, I was thinking Lohman, he'll start pocket, and Lyons just seemed to be the kind of the obvious one, because he could probably come on, and then you just shuffle the magnets a little bit depending on who has to come off there. So interesting one to start off with there by Fagan, because that whole thing where two players to play the same role.
Really interesting, mate. I really thought that Kyle Lohman had played his way into that 22. And I really thought that the game had not passed Jared Lyons, but he'd certainly be more depth. But looking forward as well, I think that Dev Rob would be the preferred option. But one thing that Fagan's really big on is playing players that have earned their spot and rewarding good form. And Jared Lyons played a decent game of football, didn't he? So I don't think he's going to be someone on Fagan's list, straight out you go. I think that even if Dev is fit, I think it's a matter of Dev actually showing some good form, potentially in the VFL, and then, making it basically impossible for Fagan to continue to play Lions. Maybe it's a poor game from Lions. I think he could always be a sub-risk as well, mate, particularly being a little bit older, as I've already mentioned, with his age. So, I can see why people are going to start him, and I'm not going to say don't start Jared Lyons, but personally, I'd be more comfortable just getting that extra week starter. They've got the bye, then we can sort of reassess there if we need to, mate. So,
Yeah, and I,
yeah, but a really interesting conversation with him.
yeah, and I actually I slightly disagree with you there, where I think you can't start him because the whole reason is Brisbane play the last game of round one, so we won't know if he's going to be the sub coming in until, and
Great
then you've
point.
got nowhere to go. Maybe unless you weren't planning to start five, and you had that little bit of, I think it's 25k difference. So if you
Yeah,
were like
okay.
more in Lions than five, and you left a little bit of money in the bank, you could potentially make that last minute switch. But outside of that, yeah, if he's named sub, and it might be a horses to, of courses situation where, of courses situation where, yeah, they're playing Perth, the bigger stadium over at Optus. You might want a bit more run over there, so maybe Lions does play a different role. Where then at the Gabba or like the different matchups, so maybe against the Pies, yeah, he's back in the middle because you want that bigger body. Might be a greasy night, so greasier conditions. So yeah, that maybe that's what Fagan's thinking. It's always hard to get into a coach's head, but yeah, I think that would be my thoughts around it. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
Very good, mate. Well, look, there. I suppose we've sort of discussed Dunkley and and Lyons sort of in the same vein there. Lockie Neal, 112 super coach points, so not a bad game from Neal. It seems like he's well, it's certainly no major problem by the look of it, but just a minor issue with his shoulder. He's reached for that a couple of times in the last couple of matches, mate. So it seems like he's dealing with a slight issue there, which is concerning enough for me to just want to see him play out. Absolutely up until his bye. He's a player that you could look to upgrade to after he's had that first bye, but we really don't need to think too much into this pick now. We just watch how he goes, get a little bit of extra data, and then reassess there. I think it's pretty much the same with all of your Lions premiums, mate. The same as your Dunkley. Zorko up the top 105, would not touch him with a 10-foot pole, so don't go there.
Yeah, it started
Zack
on
Bailey.
fire. Absolutely,
Oh,
Benny's boys
didn't he?
started on fire there. It was just unreal.
Oh, he's- look, he's the sort of player who I think can certainly make an impact for us. And he's the sort of player that's been a champion of the past, can have some impact, can make some damage. But as a super coach selection at his age, durability, I just would not go there, mate. Would not go there. Um, you've got Zach Bailey, just not really the consistency for a super coach pick. Didn't get the CBAs. I think it was about, what was it, 18% from memory. Harris Andrews, 118, pretty solid from him. Could he be that type that becomes an elite defender? We know what his intercepting abilities like, but I think he has those games where his floor is a little bit low to really seriously consider him. And then we've got Kitty, who's no longer an option, which is super unfortunate. Kyle Lohman, 33, in only 36% game time, so that the kid can actually score when he's on field, mate. But at 150k at that elevated sort of rookie price without really firm job security, then you're just not going to look to pay up there, are you, mate? He's
No.
already been the sub. So we'll see what happens with Kyle Lohman. But at this stage, I just don't think that it's worth going there. So long story short, with the Brisbane players, I am not looking to start any. And there's only going to be most likely one Carlton player that I look to start anyway, bud.
Yeah, the interesting one because I was interested to see how Wilmot would go once Coleman was out because I was like, well, I know he was more starting up on the wing, but potentially just because of his skills, maybe he's the one that dropped back a little bit to half back. So Coleman goes off, and then Wilmot touched it only twice in that third quarter. Did regain in that last, but it's kind of an injury. Maybe he was relying on Coleman to get the ball to him so he'd get the ball further up the ground, and it kind of he got lost in that third quarter. So it'd be interesting to sort of see who they get to fill that role when McKenna is still out, because Coleman is
Yeah.
the big replacement for Daniel Rich. So there's definitely somebody who's going to fit in that role. Perfect would be some sort of rookie from nowhere for us to just throw that one out there for all our super coaches. But if you're listening to this, Fags, but yeah, no, how they replace that, and it's a big loss because they would have been practicing all pre-season having Coleman there.
Absolutely, mate. He was our new weapon going into this year in the back line. Such a great user by foot. and just the confidence in his own game. I think that's huge for AFL players. He knows that he absolutely belongs. I think fitness has been a little bit of an issue with him in the past, but he's as fit as he's ever been as well. So super unfortunate, mate. But I suppose that maybe the shining light is that we can get him cheaper and a bargain next year when he's back bigger and better than ever, mate.
Yeah.
So
the
shining light there, I suppose.
If we don't have the buy situation next year, the Lions Kitty Coleman locked 100% in sides because he was already
Absolutely,
super
mate.
cheap anyway. Okay, we'll move on to the Blue Baggers. Victoria's Carlton Town. Was that the first time in like 11, 12 appearances there at the Gabba? It's been a long time since they saluted up there, and you're right. It was the exact same as last year. It was just the complete opposite how it played out. From mine, and I've got to mention this off the bat, good friend of ours, JP. He came on our forwards pod, so big on Harry McKay this year. He was like, "Don't worry about Charlie Curnow. Old news. It's all about Big H. He's going top 10." And I was trying not to laugh at him, but the guy knows his stuff. And he's like, they're going to play a one ruck system with McKay chopping out. He's going to get more up the ball. If he can get his kicking going early and again build that confidence, he could be a real force to reckon with. And first game, 130. So JP, I think he's over in Bali at the moment, and I don't know how many times he messaged me to remind me that he had McKay in his top 10. I was just like, mate, just maybe concentrate on drinking some more of those Bingtangs, and but he was very up and about that situation.
Oh, could imagine. And being a Carlton man himself, this is why he's climbed Mount Everest. He's got to the top before. It's picks like this, and I must admit, never ever on my radar was Big Harry. But 130 Supercoach points, 9 kicks, 4 marks, 4 handballs, 7 marks, 3 goals, 1. And obviously, mate, we know that he got a bit of scaling for that clutch goal, won the game, and that's what Supercoach loves. And there's been times in his career where he's had the wobbles. I don't think that the confidence has been there with his goal kicking. So if I take my Brisbane Lions supporter hat off, I just think it's great for the young man. And not the young man, he's really coming into his peak and prime now, but just fantastic for him that I suppose I hope that those demons have gone for him. And look, they goal kickers and key forwards go through those times where you do lose a little bit of confidence from here to there, but great to see him nail that right at the end. And I think that extra ruck time, and I think it was about 10%, but the great thing about that, mate, as we know, there's times in games where as a key forward, you just can't get near it. There's just those games that they have. And so allowing him to actually get a little bit more involved. I think that's what Brisbane do really well with someone like Joe Danaher. If Joey isn't getting involved, Fags will get him into the ruck. And Joey's a bit of a confidence type player as well. So he'll get a couple of quick touches, maybe bang a couple of clearances, long ball inside 50, just getting involved in the game and simply getting your hands on the football. I think that can do some players the world of good. So with that little bit of an extra bonus with Harry McKay and the fact that, let's be honest, mate, the forward line has been a little bit up and down in the pre-season, picks that we like, picks that we've gone off. There is a world where he finishes somewhere around the top 10 for averages. So I don't mind it from JP. A very interesting pick, one that wasn't on my radar. But if JP says that there's something with him, mate, then I think that you've got to take him seriously.
Well, that's 100% right. And I just talked about on my my latest team reveal that I'm been very big on the idea of starting Jesse Hogan if he was to ton up this week. And of course, he comes out and scores 113. So the potential move there is talking about this one buy flip situation that I'm looking at. Maybe it is Hogan. I get a free look at McKay against a Richmond backline, which is pretty well in the shambles at the moment. And there's potential there where he could go anywhere 100 plus against the Tigers. And then that would really, be asking myself questions about going, well, Hogan goes North Melbourne, West Coast. He gets the bye. Is it a trade to a McKay who's going to have a really low break even? And then McKay would be facing North Melbourne and Freo in the next 2 weeks. There's potential here for McKay to have one of these Tex Walker starts of the year that he did a couple of years ago, and I know a few people jumped on, and there's always a player like this that comes absolutely smashing out of the blocks, kicks. We see it every time, And
Yep.
we never jump on them because of the lack of trades and opportunities we have. But because of the buy and the 40 trades this year, we do have a little bit of flexibility if that's how we want to play the game. And it's these aggressive moves that potentially put you up there in the top winning, because so many people have similar sites. So you've got to take the risks and find the right risks. And maybe, JP's onto something.
Yeah, I think you summed that up really well, and you said it really well, because a lot of teams will look pretty similar, I think, going into the year. And it's all about those wacky moves. And I say wacky with the greatest of respect. I love the fact that you're thinking outside the box there, mate. You're planning ahead on a bit of a pod move, how to get a bit of a quick start and advantage, and then look to move on. And fixture is absolutely key. We know that you're an expert not only in the AFL, as we mentioned the BBL before. We know that you got the top round score, if you don't mind, in the NBL. So I think that's where we've got a bit of an advantage, mate, being BBL and NBL Supercoach players. Fixture's king, isn't it, when it comes to those two formats of the game? And if you knew some of your knowledge and planning ability this year in AFL Supercoach, particularly with these buys with round zero and all the rest, I think it does give you a big advantage on the competition. So I'm absolutely with you, mate. I'm looking to make a couple of buy flips early on in the season. I've pegged two myself. Exactly which players I'm going to use for that, I'm not 100% sold on. And that's going to be the real fun / stressful hair-pulling part of my life in the next 5 odd days, however long we've got before the start of the season, mate. But you've got to do that. You've got to go a little bit different. Look at someone like Abs, and Abs goes really, really different. But this year, I'm going to get what I call a little bit of the Godfather approach to me. Look for one of those different moves early on to set myself apart and just really try to get a top-notch rank. Rather than going for that 1%, your 1,000, top 2,000 rank, let's try something a little bit different this year, Swiz. We've got 40 trades. We've never had this before. We're all rookies in a way. Given the fact we've got these 4 extras, there's been no history, no data on the best way to use them. So a couple of early buy flips, mate, absolutely love it. And Carlton are a very relevant team when it comes to these potential flips, which is why we've got to talk about some of these players, mate.
Exactly, and it's something for like me because again, Abs has had a top 4. I've been inside the top 50 twice, coming after the buys, but then have had to make these moves later in the season to try to chase those points to go for the win, and it's backfired. You end up finishing just outside the top 200 and you go, well, I had a crack. But yeah, if you can actually get in pain off at the start, it makes everybody chasing you, which way easier, apart from the stress of like watch people trying to catch you. And I know JP shared some stories about that, but and in the end of the day, like if it doesn't come off at this time of the year, there's other moves that you can kind of make to try to catch up to that pack, or even trying to get your captaincies right, or taking more risks like that. I was actually Telegated Knights was on the other day, and the whole if you're not first, you're last kind of thing. And really, it is what it is, that, because who really cares if I finish 1,000, 10,000, whatever, and that we all want to win, or if not, unless you're playing for leagues, but still you're wanting to win that. So you're trying to set your team up for that position. Like, who gives a stuff if you've finished further back because you tried some moves and they don't pay off? It's but we're using, as you said, our knowledge and our, us looking over the fixture with a fine-tooth comb, different matchups, and that's kind of the thought process there. And talking about thought process, because Carlton are missing a couple of soldiers now. We know Doherty, who's pretty well a 100-point player out of their midfield, so that's 100 points out, which if you're going to replace by somebody coming in, they're probably a 40-point player too. So there's 60 points there for that Carlton side if the opposition isn't taking it, but that would normally be there. They've already missed Walsh, who they've listed as indefinite until after their bye, so they're going to wait till their bye to give a better response on that. Same with Weedery. So 3 of their best players we know are out for that period of time, which now opens the door very much for 3 particular players in that Carlton midfield. And one scored 106 on the weekend, had a poor season last year, but if we're talking about players that could potentially be underpriced, George Hewitt at 440 might be a little sneaky there if we're talking about jumping on somebody for a short amount of time.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at the CBAs here, so you had Cherry with 76%, And then Cripps and Hewitt are bang on second most preferred mids, 69%. Then you go all the way down to Jack Carroll. So based off that data, it looks like the big three are going to be Chera, Cripps, and Hewitt. No Doherty, no Walsh, as we've mentioned. You got someone like a Matty Kennedy. He was there for 21%, but I rate Hewitt over someone like a Kennedy. We know that he's got history in the midfield. Remember when we all selected him down back that year, mate? Was absolute gold.
111 that year, which is only
Oh,
people
man.
have short-term memories in here because I'm having arguments about Steele and Ollie Wines is a great one. What a Brownlow like 3 years ago. George Hewitt in
100%.
2022, so we're 2024. So he had a poor year last year for different reasons, and only averaged the 78 from his 17 games. There was a couple injury affected, like the injury affected 22 in there, and but did finish strong. Like he finished with 99, 142, 112, and 84. They got him for a reason from Sydney. And I know Chris and I have had this discussion. I think one of the most underrated players in the competition. But yeah, 2022, 111 for the season. Kicks off first game in that midfield, as you said, with those CBAs, 106. Like, why couldn't George Hewitt return? And we're all looking at that. Ollie Wines and Martin, Crouch, Holmes. There's a whole lot in that price range. Nobody's talking about this guy.
No, and it's all about role, isn't it? And potential for upside. Now we look at Sydney, for example. Parker, Mills, Adams, these sort of blokes are out. And then you look at someone like a James Jordan, you think, okay, there's some upside there. He needs to fill that void. Now, who's going to fill the Doherty/Walsh void? Surely looking at the numbers here, mate, it's got to be Georgie Hewitt. Now, one interesting thing I noticed here was the TOG. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He was the sixth lowest time on ground with that 77. And then you've obviously got Carroll and Doherty, they're the 35. So without taking them out, it was just Cunningham, Owies, and Fantasia that had lower time on ground. So I don't know the reasoning for that. But if that TOG gets up a little bit anyway, mate, just at least that 80%, I think there's some more meat on the bone there. But it's all about opportunity. Opportunity is the huge word here. And with those particular players out, Doherty for the long term, I don't know. Do you know off the top of your head what the return date for Walsh is?
Yeah, well, I just said that it's indefinite until. So they said they'll put a timeline on it in about 14 days. So we know he's out for another 14 days at least before they even put a timeline on it. So potentially there it could be another 3 or 4 weeks after their bye. If not longer, and it depends on how they want to use him, because a lot of the time Walsh was coming off the half forward flank and coming through the midfield way. They might have had a chair or somebody in the midfield who then was running forward. So it depends on how fit and firing Walshy comes back into it. He's going to probably start a little slow, so it might be Hewitt and Shearer. We know they got him across as well. Can go more outside. He's a pretty good inside midfielder, but yeah, they've got the ability to move those pieces around. And as much as we love Paddy Cripps, he's not the most injury prone or the most stable person on the field. Like he's had some injury issues, and it's hard when you're planning these things, because we all go, oh yeah, well this guy's going to come back, like the Sydney situation, as we said. Everyone's like, oh, Parker and Mills, and they'll come back. Well, who's to say somebody else doesn't get injured or they have a relapse in their injury as well? So
yeah.
I think we were saying about buy flip players before with McKay. Hewitt at 440, we get another free look at him against Richmond this week, so I wouldn't be starting him in your teams unless you might just want to start him and stash him on your bench, because nobody's going to have a Carlton premium or Brisbane premium anyway, and I feel like you could probably have one from each round, and he could absolutely smoke Richmond's midfield. But if you wanted to wait a week, well, you get another week's of data, and yeah, his break even could be very friendly coming into those games. As we said, North Melbourne and Fremantle, it's a very juicy draw for Carlton.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Look, I really like him, actually. But as you said, not necessarily as that starting pick, but he's such an easy down from so many players that you look to start in the midfield. So even if you're starting with the Matty Crouch and all of a sudden there's a bit of a different story come season and he's not looking like you thought he would, then bang, there's an easy one down. Just after his bye, bring your Hewitt in. Easy, nice and easy. It's not like he's a player that's going to get out of reach early. You get to see a couple of weeks. He's got a week off. You can make your plans, knowing what his two scores are, knowing what his break even's going to be. That's the beauty of players from Carlton. And again, we've mentioned it a few times, but that buy flip strategy, I am really big on with you, mate. I don't know if there's too many other people in the community that are. I don't know how people are feeling about that. I know that there are some that think absolutely stupid, don't do it, waste of trades, whatever. And that's fine, mate. That's the beauty about Supercoach. We've all got our different strategies, but I must admit, when it comes to this buy flip, a little bit of an aggressive strategy, but I'm with you on it, mate. And again, just a prime candidate if you want to go down from one of these other players in your midfield.
Exactly. Now, there's a couple other players we have to talk about. One is, I think he's returned in about 2 years, Zack Williams. What did you think of his game?
Did everything that I needed for him to do, mate. Short story, we know what the issues are, and that's obviously durability. We know what sort of a contract he's on. They're paying him good money, and that's because he is such a talented player. When he's fit, when he's on the park, when he's got that confidence in his body, he is such a damaging player. Now, I don't think that realistically we were looking for anything like a 95 plus type score. I think, well, personally, what I wanted to see was the role. What type of role is he playing? I wanted to look at that time on ground. Are they really going to look to manage him, or are they going to give him a fair crack? I just talked to Janeth and did his team preview actually, mate, earlier on today, and that's a point that he made about Zack Williams, the fact that if he's playing, then they deem him fit and ready to rock and roll. He's not the sort of player that they're going to put on the park thinking, is he almost right? According to him, they need to be 100% confident that he's ready to fire and the body's good. So looking at that time on ground, where are we? Zack Williams.
80%?
I think it was decent. Was it around 80? Yeah, it was 80. So 80% time on ground. That's fantastic for me, mate. He wasn't subbed out. Look, will there be a game before the bye where he could get subbed out?
Well,
Possibly,
it's their buys.
He's got that early buy.
Yeah, so
He's
that's
got that
all
early
right.
buy, doesn't he?
Yeah,
So
it's
why are they going to worry about that?
Yeah.
I just don't think so.
No.
An easy starting pick for me, mate. I
Yeah.
think at the price. Now, we've talked about not starting certain Carlton people, but I think he's a pretty easy one, mate. Use him as a loophole for that week. You can then get the best rookie score if you're running with two rookies on your bench even. So I think for me, mate, he is a bit of a no-brainer now. I must admit, though, when there was talk of him not getting up for round 0, I did have many teams without him, but I'm a lot more confident now after seeing that. It didn't set the world on fire, went out of the game a little bit, but I was pretty impressed, mate, and did everything that I needed him to do. Do you feel any differently on Zack Williams, mate?
Yeah, I didn't have him in. I was tossing up between putting a rookie there, D'Ambrosio, or going a little bit deeper in the defence, but I saw enough with that. The main thing was just for him getting through, but the fact that he still had 19 touches, 80%, it's everything you want, and he'll be better for the run. And it might be another quietish game depending on how much ball the Tigers get up to the forward line this week, but I still think he could walk out there and probably get 75-80 against us, and then we'll see how it goes from there. But he gets a break after a couple of games, rests up and goes fresh, and it's perfect timing because there's a couple other easy kills on the other side, and he could easily make us 150, 200k if he's staying on the park.
Absolutely, mate. And I think he's probably the type of bloke, well, this is the way that I feel anyway, looking at that durability, you almost feel that he's going to go down at some stage in the season. I don't want to predict injuries, but he'll be the type of player, potentially even if you look to start a Nick Martin. So Nick Martin, you go back, take him into your back line, and Williams could be one of your first upgrades. If you are worried about durability, if you could make his cash nice and early on, and you're worried about holding on to him for too long, if you think there's something that is inevitably going to happen to him, then he could be part of your first upgrade as well, mate. So lots that you can do with this pick anyway, I think.
Yeah, for sure. One other one, and there's a rookie player, which I don't like picking guys who normally start as subs. But because Doherty did go down early, and the Carlton people that I've talked to, very big raps on him. All preseason have been harping on the fact that some of these rookies who were taken during the COVID years didn't get the opportunity to have that backing through the under 18s, get the miles in the legs. So they've had some affected form, and he was one. Picked up a couple. Made his debut in 2021, I think it was. 2022, so picked up in 2021. So there's a couple years there before that where unfortunately he was affected by the lockdowns. Even though he was over in WA, it still wasn't the same. They would normally do all their national carnivals and things like that. So he did still play 5 games in that first year. There was one of the last ones was a sub one, but the first couple of games he played, it was a 95 and a 59. So finding the ball wasn't that big of an issue. And came on, got his opportunity, and looked really good. Moved in that midfield, 10 touches, kicked an important goal, 65 Supercoach in that time. Not one I don't think I can start because I've got to see what happens this week. But could be potentially one of those ones like, damn, he's a rookie I've got to trade into because we didn't start him because I think he did everything right.
Agreed. He actually burnt me. I had him in that year, and I was really wanting him to be playing during my buys. I think it might have been him and a Rioli. They were all around available at the same time. I might have done something ridiculous like a triple downgrade even that week when he was on the bubble. I forget exactly what the story was. But look, again, we talked about this with George Hewitt. It's opportunity, isn't it, mate? And let's be honest, with the time on ground that he had, I'll just sort by time on ground again. So Jack Carroll, 35% time on ground for a 65 Supercoach
Ridiculous.
Score. So if you're looking at points per minute there, that's off the charts, isn't it, mate?
Yeah.
His points per minute. So is he someone that Michael Voss is really going to want to drop after that performance? Or is Vossi the sort of bloke to go, do you know what, son? You had 35% game time, and within that, you did absolutely everything you could to impress me. You have now won your spot again. I'm hoping that that's the case so that we get another decent look at him before the bye. Then we can absolutely assess what his break-even's going to be, and then whether or not he's going to be someone that is worth using a trade on to get into your side with that cash gen, whatever it's predicted to be. So, I couldn't have really been more impressed with him in the time on ground that he actually had, mate. So 10 touches, had a mark, a couple of tackles there, also hit the scoreboard, and 6 of those 10 were contested as well, and he went at 80%. So,
I'll add to that, mate, because he actually had a 60-point third quarter when he came on. And he only scored 5 points in the last because of his 4 touches. He actually butchered 2 of them. So his 2 turnovers were in the last quarter. So that third quarter, the fact that a young fella like that can come on and score 60 points in a quarter, it probably shows a bit the sky's the limit. 188 centimetres as well. So a really good size about him to able to come in and play that midfield. I think the modern day midfielder now, too many of these pipsqueaks, not to say they can't play footy, but it's always been a talking point to say Essendon and how many 180 centimetre guys can we have? And for him at 188, he'll feel right at home in that midfield with a couple of their other mids who are good size as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And another quick point as well, mate, before we move on from him. He wasn't playing any mugs, so he's playing the Brisbane midfield, and we've got a pretty solid midfield. So it's not like your Matty Crouch the other day playing against West Coast, where you're like, how much do you actually get from this starter?
Yeah.
The young bloke was coming up against your Dunkleys, your Neils, your McCluggages, your Jared Lyons, who, as we mentioned, are certainly no mugs. So that's another tick in the box for Jack Carroll. The fact that he did this against pretty decent opposition and 60 points in a quarter, dang. That's high scoring potential, mate. Really high scoring potential. Hey, went out of the game a little bit, but still 4 touches in the last. Like 4 touches isn't terrible. You mentioned that a couple were butchered, but it's not like he completely went out of the game. But nice contested rate there, hit the scoreboard, and seemed to have a bit of impact on the game as well, which was reflected in his Supercoach score, mate. So definitely one to keep an eye on, and another one of these blokes that, hand on heart, to be honest, just wasn't really on my watch list. Seriously.
And this always happens. There's players that aren't. They just get their opportunity, right place, right time. We said it earlier, with great sadness in these injuries comes opportunities for young players. Maybe it is a Vossi goes, while we're playing Richmond, North Melbourne, Fremantle, here's a chance, mate. We're just going to back you in for 3 weeks and show us what you can do. Because
Yeah, have a
realistically, if
crack.
Carlton are serious, they could put you and I as the 22nd and 23rd player and should beat those three teams. So I'm sure enough of with young Carroll there should get his opportunity against every team's got decent midfielders. So it's not like they're going to be tipped, because we know Freo, they've got some awesome midfielders in there. Richmond still have Taranto and Hopper. So it's there's always going to be a test for a young fella, but that's how they're going to learn, and you've got to kind of back them in, because you've got to always be developing and bringing these guys up. So it gives him an opportunity to lift, and maybe he is the stopgap in there. Why Walshy might be 3 or 4 weeks away, and they go, okay, here's your chance, young fella, show us what you can do, and then he might end up going back to the reserves, but goes back with confidence that he knows he can play at this level.
That's right, and confidence is a big thing, mate. So I think what we're saying with Jack Carroll is points per minute, fantastic, really took his opportunity. But at the end of the day, we've got another week. Take a look at him. We've got the bye, and then pretty much we can jump on after that, mate. And I think really, apart from Jack Carroll, there's no one else that I'm seriously considering. There's players with talent. There's players with potentially a little bit of upside. But to be honest, mate, from my point of view, I think that we've discussed pretty much every relevant player on that Carlton list. Was there anyone else that you think is worth discussing at this stage, Swiz?
No, 100% no. Anybody who messages me against about Azario Fantasia, and then I might block you. It's not going to happen. It was never going to happen. I think that's some of the BT hype people like try to listen to for whatever reason. He's on Supercoach. Like Nick Newman's a really solid footballer, and he's probably going to be up there again. But yeah, I'm not really interested in any of these other players. So just would be interesting watching for the ones that we have discussed, mate. But I think that's it from us. About yourself, mate. How's your team coming along?
Oh, it's funny, mate, because I've basically got two versions at the moment. My non-reactionary team and then my reactionary round zero team. So a team where I'm just experimenting with your Dogger Jacksons, your Heaney, and your Flanders, because there was one point in time that Fife was dead set my F1. That changed to Fisher as the F1. And then with the performance from these three blokes, it's like, well, do I include players like your Heaney that weren't really ever seriously on my watch list? We know we've got that data now. We know that score is going to be in his first price rise. There's a lot to think about there, mate. But after speaking with my man Janeth today, I'll give everyone a bit of a clue. He's been non-reactionary and really stuck to his principles and the players that he was confident on going into round zero, and particularly into the last practice game as well. So I'm just trying to make that decision between how much do I take into account from what's happened in the last practice game in round zero, and how much do I take into account my solid pre-season research, looking at patterns from last year, and how much do I trust my gut? So it's just that balancing act. I'm trying to probably do that at the moment, mate. Get a balancing act between making sure I've got some of the absolute big dogs. Example, your Dacos, your Bont. No need to worry about getting those blokes in. Lock them in. Then get a little bit of value there. And then work out, well, do I go with those blokes like your Zach Butters, who I've had in all pre-season, or do I look to maybe lose a midfielder and go with a Heaney type, or bring back in someone like a Flanders type? It's all about the juggling act for me at the moment, mate. So that's why I'm really lucky we've got the public holiday tomorrow, because I'm hoping that I can just get 2-3 hours. I might just go somewhere for a coffee, I don't know, out of the house, because I've got 3 boys that are absolute nuts at the moment. So I just want to get some quiet time to myself and just think about things deeply. Get a bit of that background music on, mate, that you get when you're studying back in uni back at the day. Chill out and just make some informed decisions here, mate, because to be completely honest with you, Swiz, my head is all over the shop, mate, and I need to put a team reveal out in the next 48 hours. So public holiday, clear the mind, set the team up, team reveal out, mate.
Love it, mate. Couldn't say it any better myself. Well, I do appreciate you joining us, even though it probably didn't end up been the result we were looking for, but yeah, it's still great to have you on and picking your brain in regards to the Brisbane Carlton match. And I wish you all the best for the Supercoach season, and we'll definitely catch up soon, mate.
Absolutely, Swiz. And thank you very much for having me again. Congrats again, mate, on the expert status. Couldn't have gone to a better or more knowledgeable bloke. Love what you blokes are doing on YouTube, on Spotify, and all the rest. So, yeah, for anyone that's watching, again, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, not only do you have Swiz, but you've also got Chris and Benny as well. Top blokes. They all look at the game a little bit differently, which is another reason why I love tuning into this channel. So make sure that you do subscribe. Check out all of the in-season content. Go back to the pre-season content as well, because one of my number one sources of Supercoach information and a trio of beautiful, beautiful men. So thanks again for having me on, mate. Always an absolute pleasure.
You love embarrassing us, mate. No, it's good, mate. Thank you so much. And to the Supercoach community, enjoy the week. Big week coming up for the lot of us. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Catch you later. Bye.
There you guys.